Assalamu alaikum, dear participants. Welcome to this session of Islam Study Circle. As per our convention, we'll first take a look at a portion of the Quran, and in this case, it is verse 285 of Surah Baqarah, the second surah. After that, inshallah, we'll take a look at a portion of from Hadith and, of course, then from the Bible before we go on to discuss a topic. So these words of Surah Baqarah, they read, آمن الرسول بما أنزل إليه من ربه والمؤمنون كل آمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله لا نفرق بين أحد من رسله وقالوا سمعنا وأطعنا غفرانك ربنا وإليك المصير. The messenger has believed in what has been revealed to him by his Lord, and so have the believers. All of them have professed faith in God, His angels, His books, and His messengers. They assert, we do not differentiate between any of God's messengers. And they said, we have heard and have obeyed. Lord, we seek your forgiveness and believe that on the day of judgment, to you shall we return. Here you can see how beautifully knitted and very well grounded are these tenets of faith as found in this verse. Actually, the important thing that we have to understand here is that this is near about the end of Surah Baqarah. So near the end, it is like a reminder being sounded to the Muslim Ummah, to the Ishmaelites who were in position after the Israelites had been deposed. And they are told that in order to remain steadfast, in order to understand the reality of religion, the essence of religion, once again, the tenets of faith and belief should be refreshed in your mind. And the way it is presented is that God's messenger, who is right there, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and the companions. So it is said as if something has happened in reality, something which is very circumstantially evident. It is said that God's messenger and the believers, his companions, they have professed faith. And who have they professed faith in? Kullun amana billahi. First of all, it is said that they have professed faith in God, then the angels, then all the books, and then all the messengers. And if you have this question, or this question might arise in your mind that another important tenet of faith is the hereafter. So it's not mentioned directly, but you will see as this verse goes along, it is mentioned right at the end in a slightly different way. It says, "Ghufranaka Rabbana wa ilaykal masir." We seek your forgiveness, and towards you is the return. So you can see that instead of expressing it as an article of faith the way the previous tenets are, it is mentioned more in a dynamic way, and it is said as a commitment, as an assertion, as an acknowledgement that we will return to you, which of course refers to the day of judgment, the day of accountability, the day of resurrection. The important thing that all of us have to understand here is that these tenets which are mentioned here, all of them are tenets, they are pillars, as you can say, whatever name you can call them, because these are all human or man-given names. They're not dogmatic realities. They are not something that we have to believe in without understanding them, without understanding the wisdom behind them, and without they having any proof of their veracity. So when God asks us to believe in Him and in His angels and in His books and in His messengers and in the last day, each of these tenets are separately corroborated, substantiated, well argued within the Quran, so that this does not become a blindly understood reality. You might have this point in mind that at the very beginning of Surah Baqarah, we have this verse, yu'minuna bil ghayb. So this verse has been thoroughly, or I would say grossly misinterpreted on a number of occasions to actually mean that they blindly accept faith. Yu'minuna bil ghayb, it is said as if, whatever they are told of the unseen, they just say, yes, okay, we believe in it. Whereas this is not the meaning of this verse at all. What this verse actually says that they profess faith without asking the tenet to be seen by their eyes on the basis of arguments being proffered. This is the way the structure is. The word ba, yu'minuna bil ghayb, has a very, very significant meaning, and I have just tried to unfold that meaning in a sentence. So basically, ba here is of locus, which means that without insisting to see what the ghayb is, they accept it, they believe in it on the basis of arguments which are proffered in favor of that ghaib. So if we believe in God, it's not that it's a blind belief. If we believe in the hereafter, it's not a blind belief. Similarly, we have not seen prophets of God or messengers of God, we have not seen angels, but we still believe in them. So this belief without seeing them, without witnessing them, is not blind. It is basically corroborated through reasoning. This is much like the scientifically understood fact, what we call as gravity. We've not seen gravity. We can never see gravity, but we know it exists because there are sound reasons and proofs behind it. So, in a very similar way, it's not always wise to ask for something to be seen in order to believe in it. In fact, this is a rather poor form or rather lesser form of belief. Real belief is that you believe in something not on the basis of being demanded, that you demand that thing to be seen. Real belief is something when you believe something because you know that the proofs of its existence, they are already there. So, what important thing that we have to understand is that, of course, this is a very, very concise verse, but throughout the corpus of the Quran, if you take up various passages in various surahs, you will find this to be an amazing fact that belief in God and all these tenets that are mentioned here, all of these things, they are substantiated by the Quran so that a person understands it through his intellect or her intellect, and not only that, then he or she is able to communicate this understood reality to people who who are found around that person, who he would like to or she would like to communicate whatever he or she has understood. So it becomes a vehicle, it becomes a means of communication as well, because something that you have understood on the basis of reasoning will always be something that you can communicate to others. But something that you've understood without understanding and just blindly believing in it, you will never be able to communicate because that's a blind belief. What can you say to the other person that you blindly believe? The other person will say to you that I'm better off. I already have my own set of beliefs. So, this is a very fundamental uh, approach that we have to understand, that the Quran, on all occasions, it addresses our mind. It wants us to understand facts. It never wants to blindly and without an understanding and without acknowledging, understand, or have it at the dogmatic part of our brain. And I have referred to this earlier on also, but I'll do it again. That on one occasion, there is this conversation which is cited in the Quran. It's in Surah Mulk, which says that people who would end up in hell ultimately, they will be talking to each other, and they will say, "Law kunna nasma'u aw naqilu, ma kunna fi ashabis sa'ir," which means that had we listened, heard intently, and used our brains and intellect, naqilu, use our aql, our intellect, we would not have reached this fate. Because we are blind, because we just thought that whatever our forefathers are presenting to us, that is absolutely true, we never questioned it and blindly accepted it. Now, this is a fate that we have reached. So, the most important thing is that you have to critically evaluate concepts that come your way. Your society, your parents, your friends, your whole atmosphere, the surroundings, they are replete with so many ideas and so many concepts which come under the label of religion. But you have to critically view each one of them. At times, you have to unlearn and then relearn, because unless you unlearn, you will never be able to critically evaluate and understand concepts. So, this unlearning is the biggest form of learning, as many scholars say. It's difficult because you see, you are born with a set of beliefs, we are born with a set of concepts. Yes, it's not that they're always wrong, but the thing is that these concepts have to be something that need to be verified and then re-understood and revisited. Precisely this what the Quran wants here, and in this one very small verse, it has presented before us a whole universe of meaning, implying that this is what believers, right at the end, now that they are being deputed in place of the Israelites to this position of bearing witness to the truth, now it is their responsibility to understand these facts and communicate them on the basis of this reasoning. Otherwise, they will never be able to communicate them. Another very important thing that you might have realized occurs as a very, very, I would say, as like in the form of a warning, in the form of a caution, And these are the words that you can see occur near the middle of the verse. They say, "La nufarriqu baina ahadim min rusulihi." This is something that we have to understand very, very carefully. It says that we do not differentiate between God's messengers. We believe in them equally. We revere them equally. We respect them equally. So, I mean, if you have this belief in your own in your own conviction, in your own mind, that I am going to regard all prophets of God with equal respect, this one fundamental precept can change your whole outlook. You know what it would mean? It actually means that all the prophets of God, all the books that have been sent down by God, they have been always sent down with one single message. It's always been the same religion. Every prophet of God, every messenger of God has come with the same religion. Similarly, every book has presented the same religion. That is precisely why the Quran says that why would you believe in one and not believe in the other? So therefore, la nufarriqu baina ahadim min rusuli. We will not differentiate between messengers. Yes, one could argue in favor of the fact that the Quran, as the final word of God, is with us on the basis of, it has not been altered. It is there with us in its original form, in its original language, in its original format. Whilst the other scriptures, they are still present with us. We do have them, we have access to them, but they are not found in their original language. So yes, that is something, but this does not give us any license to differentiate between prophets who have brought these scriptures. This is something which is singularly so important that if we realize this, humankind will remain connected in the form of a strong bond. Because one of the things that differentiates us, or if I can say, if you could use this word, that it actually divides us, is this belief that we differentiate between prophets of God. We differentiate not only in the guidance that has been brought by them, but also in their own status, which is absolutely incorrect. Because now let us move on to the next part of our study circle. The next segment relates to a hadith of the Prophet. And this hadith, as you can see, is from the Al-Jami al-Sahih of Imam Muslim. It says, and it has been reported by Abu Huraira. It says, An Abi Huraira taqal, Qala Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Ad-dunya sijnul mu'min wa jannatu. Actually, the word should be Ad-dunya sijnul mu'min wa jannatul kafir, which means this world is a prison for a believer and a paradise for a disbeliever. If you reflect on the words of this narrative, and in general, how at times there are profound realities, in-depth concepts that are encompassed in very small sentences. So this is one of the features that you'll find in a lot of narratives of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that profound realities, concepts which at times might take a lot of our reading to consume and understand, they're summed up in the form of almost a proverb. It's like an adage. It's like something which is presented in a very short and a concise form. And this narrative is one of them. It presents a reality, one reality in such a moving way. It says that "Ad-dunya sijnul mu'min wa jannatul kafir." This world is like a prison, because you see, for a believer who is living in this world and also abiding by all the restrictions that he or she would need to abide by as a result of the trial and test that he or she has been put to, they at times are immense. I mean, you have to be very vigilant. For example, you must always follow the voice of your conscience. You must never let your eyes take undue liberty. You have to be honest. You have to be truthful. You have to take care of other people. You have to be truthful and sincere to God as well. So these are some of the things that have been ordained for us. We have been asked to follow them, but at the same time, the restriction aspect. I mean, there are some restrictions that we might seem to enjoy. I mean, we enjoy, for example, connecting to God. We enjoy working for other people, but there are restrictions, of course, that we might find ourselves that. Well, for example, there are so many things in which we have to follow a certain decorum. Intermingling between genders requires a certain forum. Eating is something, because it relates to our own personal purification. There's a set of restrictions about it. And again, in marriage, in divorce, There are certain restrictions. So these are the things that a believer has to go through. And remember, the purpose is always it's his or her own purification. But the way they have been presented here in a very brief form is that these are restrictions which might seem to him that or her that it's like someone has incarcerated that person, imprisoned that person in a cell because you cannot go out, you cannot do this, you cannot do that. So it's not that this comparison is in the sense that there are other things that you enjoy. This comparison is strictly about those restrictions which we have to, or as believers, we need to abide by. On the contrary, people who are not believers, people who have no belief in God, or maybe who have ended up denying God, this world is like a paradise to them because they can do anything. I mean, of course, as long as they are not disturbing other people, they can follow their lust. They can follow whether they like it or not. Their conscience. They can do whatever they like because if you think that there is no accountability, if you think there is no other world, there is no hereafter, then of course in this world you can just make hay, you can just do anything that you like. But as we all know that this is a temporary place, it's a transient place, it's going to end one day, and then we will be held accountable and the role will then be reversed. The next world in which we would be presented before God in that huge assembly would be the world that would be deciding our actual fate. So if we have this stress in mind that this world is a place in which you are put through certain restrictions that you have to follow, certain conditions that you must abide by, and those conditions and restrictions are not meant to tighten you in any way. They are meant for your own purification. So the positive aspect of these restrictions is that if you understand them, you will start to enjoy them because you will understand that these restrictions are meant to purify you from inside. And what might seem to be an incarceration or imprisonment actually is something in which all of us do enjoy moments of happiness, many moments of happiness. Yes, at times we might feel that these restrictions, they do at times take their toll. But if they are understood in the right sense, and if their objective is understood, then they don't have that burden. They don't burden our souls the way they normally do. Viewers, now let's move on to the third segment of our study circle. And here we will study a portion from the Bible. To be exact, this is the Gospel of Matthew, chapter number 4, verses 18 and 19. So the words are, and when he, of course, he refers to Jesus, peace be upon him, and when he was walking by the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon, whose other name was Peter, and Andrew, his brother, who were putting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, come after me, I will make you fishers of men. Again, it's a very, very subtle, a beautiful comparison, something that tickles your intellect. It has that impact on your mind, that how Jesus, when he speaks in these parables that we often find the Bible replete with. If you study the New Testament, the Gospels, the four canonical Gospels, you'll find the way Jesus normally speaks to his audience, to his disciples, is in such a moving way, in such an enthralling way. You are amazed by the parables, by the similes, by the metaphors in which he speaks. He does not speak in the way that you would normally think that people speak, for example, in simple sentences or sentences which are more set towards simple prose. He speaks the way poetry touches our mind, the way verses touch our mind. We feel as if we have not only been touched in the mind, but our soul also is energized. It is precisely the same in these two verses here. So Jesus is just walking along the Sea of Galilee, and he witnesses two people who would be his future disciples. We know that. And they are Simon, also called Peter, and Andrew. Both of them are brothers. And as legend has it, and as history has it, they were fishermen, and they would, of course, cast nets in the sea, and then they would hunt for fish, and this was how they would make their living. And Jesus beautifully says that, well, you are trying to catch fish for your consumption. Come after me, and I'll make you understand and teach you the procedure of how you can catch human beings. Now, of course, there's no sinister intention involved in any way here. What is being meant here is that just as you are catching fish for your consumption, come and catch human beings because they are following, I mean, they're falling in sin. They are doing things which are they are reprehensible. So come after me. Let us go to people. Let us talk to them. Let us make them God conscious. Let us make them God oriented. And just as you are catching fish, you catch these people, these human beings who need help, who need sympathy, who need guidance, who need to be reminded again and again. And how beautifully, I mean, this has been set in the form of a very special occasion in which, of course, the surroundings and the atmosphere, they are benefited from. And Jesus has picked up, peace be upon him, from what he would often see or what he would often witness. And this is a very commonplace methodology that he would adopt. And we do know that Simon Peter, or as he was called, and Andrew, both brothers, they played a very significant role in his ministry, and they were very, very. I mean, they were disciples who were shining like shining students, like shining disciples who spread his message far and wide. But the way in which Jesus has called upon them, that is something which is so touching. It makes us realize that the biggest asset that you can really muster or maybe gather is to guide a human being in order to, I mean, you are a person who might have you might have some reality that has dawned upon you. You know something about the truth, but it should not stay with you. It's something that you should try to disseminate, to convey to other people. And all prophets of God are sent for this very purpose. And it is here that they also address their companions and say that, well, come and help me in this. And this is something of a task in which you are setting right the destiny of a nation, the destiny of a people who are in decadence. And one can see how it did affect. I mean, we know from history that it did affect these two, and they came to Jesus and they became his ardent followers. We have now become to the fourth segment of our study circle, and this is a moderated discussion that we often conduct. And of course, the purpose is that all of you should participate, take part in this, come up with ideas, share your experience and your wisdom, because this is an area in which every person who is listening can share his or her wisdom, his or her take on the issue at hand. And this could become a means of helping out other people who are present and give them some insight of how you think. So over to you, Mariam, if you could just moderate this. And the topic is common instances at which we show off.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. I would start off by saying, to me, I usually see it in like two different instances. So one is materialistic instances where people are showing off like their bags or maybe some car or something like that. So it's something materialistic. The other one is, I find it more interesting when it's like people showing off either their or somebody else's effort. So like, there's some people that are like, oh, my child is going to this Ivy League school, or they're in med school or something, that kind of stuff. So I personally don't think that's bad to like show off somebody's effort, but say somebody, they know that someone else is going to get hurt in their immediate circles, from the people, from one of their audiences, then I think they should refrain from doing something like that. But if it's like, I noticed it said social media on there. I don't know how many people do this on social media. I'm not on social media, so I don't know the trends there. But social media seems to be more of a materialistic type of showing off.
Right. So you see, the purpose of this discussion that also needs maybe some words. You see, when we say that these are the common instances on which we show off, you, Mariam, just pointed towards a few of them. Like, for example, you talk about our children in a way that we would like to convey their achievements, or maybe where they're studying, or what they're doing in a way that you'd like to impress the other people, or maybe not just impress them, but overawe them. Similarly, your conversation, your dressing, maybe the place that you're living. So these are all instances, and as we go along this discussion, you'll be pointing out more. But the purpose here is that these are the instances that we need to be careful about. We need to exercise caution. You must not throw caution to the wind while dressing up. I mean, it's certainly not wrong to buy things which are expensive. I mean, you have branded things which are expensive, but the purpose of those branded things or the purpose of those should not ever be to show off. If you can afford them, maybe yes, you can have them. But if the purpose is to let other people know how superior you are, then this showing off actually produces arrogance. So pretense, ostentatiousness, and arrogance, both of them go hand in hand. So whenever there's show off, there's always this element of thinking yourself to be superior. So the basic reason which the Quran checks, because of which the Quran checks this ostentatiousness, this display of whatever thing we have, is because it is instrumental in producing arrogance. It makes us full of our own selves. We think that we are superior, and this is something which is most detestable in the sight of God, that you regard yourself to be superior. Please now continue.
So, are you trying to ask, like, what are some ways that we find ourselves
So yes, I mean,
avoid showing
I
off?
would say, yeah, I would say that yes, the various avenues on which we show off should also be discussed, because at times we are not. I mean, things happen and we are not aware. So yes, people should discuss things. I mean, what are these instances, and at the same time, also maybe present a solution to this. How we can curb this habit. You see, if you study human nature, you'll find that domination, to dominate other people, is like an instinct that all human beings have. They want to dominate other people. They would like to present themselves as better than the others. There are occasions, of course, which can be thought of that might ratify this, but on most occasions, this is done as a show of your own arrogance. This is where the Quran wants us to stop well short of it, and always realize that one of the most cherished traits in the sight of God is humility, to be down to earth, and arrogance is the exact opposite of humility. And showing off is something, when we always have that arrogance at the back of our mind. So basically, to undermine arrogance, to promote humility, that is something that has to be a target. But for that, we must always refresh in our mind, remind ourselves that these are the instances that I might be maybe inadvertently doing certain things without realizing, but I need to check myself.
Thank you for that, Dr. Saleem. So I'll give an example from something that I did last year. So last year I applied for a grant, and it was a ton of work and a ton of effort on my part, and I felt really proud of it. So I sent it to my family and some of my close friends because I didn't want them to feel really proud of me.
Okay.
But then I realized, for some people, they started, some of, like, not my immediate family members, but then those related to them. You would see them, like, I could tell from their faces that, maybe I shouldn't have shown it to them because they're working really hard so that they can also become graduate students one day. And they don't have the same sort of the privileges that I've had in my life. I got very lucky with a lot of stuff. So I shouldn't have shown it to them that way. Rather, just like talked about it briefly, but not sat there like, oh, look, this is all the stuff that I did. So that made me realize it. And since then, I've been more careful with, like, sharing my work with other people, because I don't want other people to feel like they're lower than me or they can't talk to me because of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So that was my example. Moving on to participants. So Shabnam, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mariam. सर आपने ये टॉपिक प्रेजेंट किया तो उससे इमीडिएटली जो एग्जांपल मेरे स्ट्राइक की दिमाग में, वो सर बहुत इट्स वेरी कॉमन एंड आई थिंक इट्स वेरी वेरी डेंजरस. इसका सॉल्यूशन तो आप ही प्रेजेंट कर सकते हैं सर. यह मौका आ रहा है ईद उल अजहा का, तो सर इसमें जो कुर्बानी होती है उसमें मुझे लगता है बहुत बहुत ज्यादा ये शो ऑफ होता है, और जानवरों की कितना बड़ा जानवर है कितना, तो सर ये मुझे लगता है ये हिडन होता है, बहुत से लोगों को पता ही नहीं होता. वो ऊपर से तो वो यही समझ रहे होते हैं कि हम अल्लाह के लिए कर रहे हैं. तो सर ये मुझे बहुत डेंजरस ऐसे स्पेशली रिलीजन से रिलेटेड जो है ये मेरा ख्याल है हमें से थोड़ा सा केयरफुल रहना चाहिए.
Right. So yes, absolutely right, Shabnam. Spot on. I mean, displaying ourselves or showing off our religiosity, our own inner God consciousness, is something that has to be checked all the time. Because I mean, this is the reason, for example, that we know that the Prophet, when people would be praying in the mosque and they would be doing their fard prayers, he would often say that, well, if you have to pray your nafil prayers, your optional prayers, you might go back to your house and pray them, because when you start praying your optional prayers in front of the mosque, then of course at times the way you pray might get noticed, and someone might say, well, that he's a very, very God-fearing person, he's praying like this and that. Although it might also be a means of inspiration, but at times you need to check yourself also that this could be something that could be taken in other ways. Similarly, things that outwardly might present you to be a person who has a particular outlook, they must also be checked. But I think the most important part here is your own intention, how you, I mean, how you behave in this way. So that intention is something that is always put to test in these circumstances. And as you have rightly pointed out, in this Eid, or Eid al-Adha, animal sacrifice becomes a means of show off as well, because people have all sorts of animals, and we have the media splashing news that, well, this is the biggest animal that was sold, and for this amount and that amount, and it goes on and on, and it becomes I mean, it becomes a display of how wealthy you are and how you are. I mean, so you are on a buying spree of so many animals. There are people who would buy 5 or 10 or 7, 11, and as much as they would like to, and then they would display that. So I think this is one thing that we have to realize, that there should not be any means of show off, just as any other ritual should not be a means of show off. If you've offered Hajj or Umrah more than one times, then starting your name with a title that displays that you have done Hajj many times, and for example, you are in a person who's going to Umrah for a number of times, is again something that should not be a means of show off in any way. And this is something which goes unchecked. So yes, not only in our ordinary life, in which we do have this tendency of showing off the talents. You see, showing off generally relates to the talents which a person has. If a person has a pronounced talent in any sector, in any sphere of life, he or she would perform well, and this could become a test for that person, that they should not be used in any way to overawe other people. So basically, this is how showing off is found in our society. So the best way in this regard is to always, always think about how people would perceive what you are doing, and at the same time, the intention must. I mean, if at all you have to say something, it should only be, your intention should be to inspire people instead of overawing them. At times, you need to tell your own children, your own surroundings, maybe your friends, that there are certain things that you need to do. And for that, you might present yourself as an example, not to show off, but to inspire people. So there is a very thin line between giving inspiration and showing off. So that has to be maintained. And as I said, the only thing that we can do is give this guideline, that your source of, you should be a source of inspiration. If you're doing something that you would like other people to see, your purpose should be that inspiration that you can provide to other people, not that you would like to make themselves realize how lowly they are. And as I said, it's a thin line, it's a thin test, but that is a real test of life, actually.
Dr. Saleem, Siddiqa, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. A small add-on. I mean, everything said was amazing. Just wanted to add on to what Minnie said about the less privileged people around us. We all have relatives who may not be as entitled or privileged as we are, alhamdulillah. So I think that fine line between showing off and just sharing what you have, and then the third fine line of being tone deaf. There are people around us who can be tone deaf about, it could even be something as simple as, if I'm speaking to my relatives in Pakistan and, we just finished a barbecue with our pool in the backyard, there might not be a need to share all that information. So I just wanted to add that tone deafness.
Right, that is correct. That is correct. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Naveed Irfan, please go ahead.
एक रिवायत है जिसमें ये बताया गया कि एक साहबी आते हैं अल्लाह के रसूल सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम के पास, और वो कहते हैं कि अल्लाह तो सर मेरा दिल चाहता है कि मैं बेहतरीन कपड़े पहनूं या मतलब जो चीजें हैं वो करूं, तो उसके ताल्लुक से फिर क्या ये मतलब वो रियाकारी तो नहीं है? मतलब तो इसके ताल्लुक से फिर अल्लाह के रसूल सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम ने फरमाया कि नहीं, ये वो नहीं है। मतलब वो तो ये है कि एक तो तुम हक का इनकार करो और या फिर जो है तुम दूसरों को हकीर समझे। तो
Correct.
इस ताल्लुक से मतलब इंसान को बेहतरीन अच्छा पहनने और अच्छा मतलब गाड़ी लेने या अच्छा घर बनाने का ये जज्बा होता है, लेकिन इसमें मतलब वो लाइन कब क्रॉस कर जाता है उसको एहसास नहीं हो पाता। तो इसको किस तरह मैनेज किया जा सकता है? मतलब अपन को कहीं ना कहीं अंदर से लग रहा है कि चीजें अपन ऐसी भी नहीं है, लेकिन फिर बाद में जब लोग आते हैं तो कुछ ना कुछ शो ऑफ हो जाता है, वो चीजें अपनों को बाद में फील होता है कि हाँ यार ये तो ऐसा भी हो गया था।
I think this is something that this is precisely what the test is all about. You need to always recheck yourself, have a check on your own self, revisit your own concepts. It's a thing that whenever we feel, whenever we are not attentive, it tends to elude us. So this is a constant struggle that we have to go through. It's an effort that we have to do all the time, and if inadvertently we do cross the limits, hopefully God would forgive us. But as I said, this is the real test, that at times you miss the whole line, and at times you cross that line. So whether the line is blurred and whether you cross that, these themselves, they pose us as tests from God, and we need to be vigilant. We need to be attentive. And that is how life is all about. I mean, you have to be vigilant, attentive, that you might not fall into sin. You should not stumble into sin. Something that you might do inadvertently, that should also be taken care of. I mean, at least you should plan for that. So, I mean, there is no rule of thumb. There's no method that I can suggest to you except that this vigilance, to be always on guard, to always be attentive, is something that we need to keep on reminding ourselves. And this is not just the case with this one thing that we are discussing. This is basically the case with everything in religion. Whatever we find to be incorrect or wrong, and whatever is alluring to us, you see, there are things which are very attractive. We fall for them. And it is here that we need to be more cautious, exercise more care. And that is it. I mean, this is an effort, this is a struggle that every one of us has to go through. And it's something that we need to come to grips with.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Naushad Shafkat, please go ahead.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum. Sir, I'm surprised that the most common instance of showing off is at marriages and the walimas and all that.
Right.
And there are instances where people, even if they can't afford it, just because the mother insists that maybe it's her only son, that it's my only son, I want to go out of my way to make his wedding memorable. There have been cases where mother has 7 sons, and even at the wedding of the last son, she would say, "Now this is the last son that I have, and after that, I'm not going to celebrate anything." So I think we need to check it there, because there are many, and the heartbreaking thing in this is that usually when these posh weddings take place, very close relatives who are not socially so well off monetarily, they are ignored. And they say, no, 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 how can that person come to this wedding? You know, it's at the 5-star hotel and she's never seen. And so these are instances, I think, which are more common than any of those that we have mentioned. And I think a great need to restrain this. Of course, if you have the money, you can flaunt it a bit, but don't go out of your way to make every wedding seem to be the last wedding of your life. Thank you, Doctor.
Yes, correct. I mean, this is something that plagues our society. If you add the dowry, which is it has become a essential part. I mean, there are things which the opposite family actually demands from the bridegroom's from the bride family. In fact, they give a list of things that this is what she should bring. I mean, this is something of I would say it's an awful thing. It's simply which is unacceptable, but it has become such an integral part of our society that even people who would not like to do it, they are driven into it because one or maybe two members of the family, they insist that, well, this is, as you said, this is the first wedding, this is the last wedding, this is the middle wedding. They have all sorts of reasoning to justify. But the thing is, as we know, that the biggest wealth that a person can have is what the Prophet is once reported to have said when he was asked that what is richness, what is this, how would you classify a person who is wealthy? And he said, ghina al qalb. A person is rich. I mean, a person is truly rich who is rich at his heart. If you're rich in your heart, which means that you're content, you don't have any greed, you have full awareness of the fact that whatever you have is sufficient for you. It is you need to go forward and no need to run in that rat race in which we would like to accumulate things for our own self. So I find this saying of the Prophet to be truly amazing when he said, ghina al qalb, that a real wealth or real richness is the richness of your heart. If your heart is rich, you don't need those riches which are around you. And this richness of the heart, as I said, it is grounded in a simple life, in a life in which you are content, in a life in which you are focused more on the higher realities of life. For example, thinking of doing something to contribute in the society that we live in, to give our share, our fair share, or maybe our humble share, whatever we can offer to the society that we are living in, to live a life of service to people and to live a life of servitude to the Almighty. So there are higher realities of life, to create something, to be of use. So this will give us that time. But if we are in that rat race, we don't find time for these things.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Yasir, please go ahead.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम। तो हमारे यहाँ कुरान सर्किल होता है। अब इसके अंदर कुछ मौका मिलता है कि उसके अंदर स्टडी करके जाएं और लोगों के साथ अपनी स्टडी शेयर करें। अब उसके अंदर जब मैं कुछ प्रिपरेशन करता हूँ तो कोशिश ये होती है कि जो भी बात मैं कह रहा हूँ उसके अंदर रेफरेंसेस हों कुरान के और हदीस के, और उसके अंदर प्रॉपर उसका रेफरेंस जो है वो दिया जाए। फिर कभी-कभार ये फीलिंग होती है कि क्या इसके अंदर ये मैं इसलिए कर रहा हूँ कि लोग मुझसे इम्प्रेस हो जाएं। फिर उसके अंदर एक फील ये आती है अपने आप को जस्टिफाई करने के लिए कि एक्चुअली मैं रेफरेंस दे रहा हूँ तो शायद लोगों को कुरान की तरफ और हदीस की तरफ लेके जा रहा हूँ कि इतनी अच्छी बात कुरान और हदीस ने कवर की है। लेकिन लास्ट पॉइंट जो मेरा क्वेश्चन है आपसे, जो मैं शेयर करना चाह रहा हूँ, वो ये एक एम्बिगिटी सी जहन में आती है कि क्या ये जो सेकंड पॉइंट था ये पहले आना चाहिए मेरे दिमाग में, या जब मैं रेफरेंसेस तैयार कर रहा होता हूँ कि जी मुझे कुरान के लिए लोगों को कुरान की तरफ लोगों को माइल करना है इसलिए मैं कर रहा हूँ, या कभी कभार जो पहली बार ये आता है दिमाग में कि यार लोग मुझसे मेरी स्पीच को सुनेंगे, मेरा 10 मिनट्स का जो भी मैं उनके साथ शेयर करूंगा और उसके अंदर रेफरेंसेस होंगे तो उनको लगेगा कि हाँ भाई ये बड़ा अच्छा प्रिपेयर करके आया। तो व्हाट शुड कम फर्स्ट, और क्या ये वाकई दिखावा हो जाएगा किसी लेवल पे?
I mean, you see, the fact that you are discussing this question, the fact that these thoughts come to you itself shows that, I mean, this is not at all any, I mean, display of your own knowledge. It's not ostentatiousness in any way. So these are the thoughts which at times Satan also instills in your mind in order to make you think that, well, you are someone who is truly gifted, you express your knowledge in a way. So don't think that everything that comes to your mind is something that is taught by your own self. Yes, we are lured by our own nafs, our own soul, and we are lured by Satan's whisperings. So the waswasa, or the whisperings of Satan, they do come to us. But the next thing is that you just need to caution and prod yourself, and that beautiful prayer of the Prophet, A'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina, which means that God, I seek refuge with you from these tricks and these pranks that my soul is playing with me. So these are basically shurur of the nafs that come to you, and they make you they give you this bait. So your response is you just reject that bait, you don't fall for that bait, and just move ahead and just show your fist to Satan in your own imagination that I'm not going to fall for you. So these are the things that come in the mind of every person. And remember, every person who might be teaching, who might be writing, who might be doing any sort of service, and not even service, if he or she has some talent and that expression of that talent takes place, this always comes into the mind of that person, not as something that he would always or she would always like, but as I said, as a luring, as a as a suggestion from your own soul or from Satan. So the best thing to do would be to just ward it off and say this prayer in your heart. A'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina. God, I seek refuge with you from these pranks and these things which my soul says to me. And immediately redirect your attention that I'm doing this for the service of other people. I'm trying to contribute my best. And that is all. And you would also remember maybe that there is on one occasion the Sahaba, they asked the Prophet that they have these thoughts in their mind. They are so, they're so weird and they're so preposterous that if they express them, it would be something that they could find no words to, because these are horrible things that come to their mind. And you know what the Prophet said? Zakal Iman. This is actually a sign of faith. Actually a sign of faith, because you are worried about the fact that these things are bothering you, and you would not like to take the better of, let them take the better of you. So this in itself is a sign of faith. I think, alhamdulillah, you should be thankful to God about it, and just be careful and just do your job and do your duty. And whenever this thought comes to you that you're doing this to show off or maybe to impress other people, as I said, just seek refuge with God.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Samra Harun, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Sir, in Surah Al-Mu'minun, Juz 18, Allah Ta'ala फरमा रहे हैं कि कुफार के मुतालिक कि जब उनमें से किसी एक को मौत आती है तो वो जिस वक्त फरिश्तों को देख लेते हैं तो वो कहते हैं मेरे रब मुझे वापस लौटा ले कि शायद मैं इस बार कुछ नेक अमाल कर लूं। माय क्वेश्चन इज कि वो ये कुफार के बारे में बात हो रही है जब वो सारी उम्र इनकार करते रहे हैं और वो नहीं ईमान लाए, तो फरिश्तों को देखते ही हाउ वुड दे थिंक ऑफ डूइंग गुड डीड्स या ईमान लाने के बारे में?
Right. This is exactly what the Pharaoh said when he was drowning. He said, Amantu bi Rabbi Musa wa Harun. He knew that his end is near. He knew that he's now going to die. He knew that he would now face God's reckoning. So what else could he have done? He said, I profess faith in the Lord, in the God of Moses and Aaron. And he was replied to, and he was told that such faith is of no use to you, because now when the end is near, now that you know that your reckoning is just hovering over you, your faith has no value in the eyes of God. Precisely this is what these kuffar, or this verse of Surah Mu'minun conveys, that when the time of death arrives, when people start to stare at the angels who have come to claim their souls, they know that now it's the end of story. It's curtains. So now they reach out and they try to say that, well, because you see, the Quran says in their heart of hearts, they knew that they were doing something wrong. They knew that they were intentionally denying the truth. But when the truth is staring them in the eye, this is the only thing that they would do, because they want to save their skin, they want to save their lives. And this is what Pharaoh did. But God told him, and God would tell these disbelievers also, that it's no use now. The time for professing faith was when you were given the time to reflect and accept out of your own willingness and not reject because of arrogance. This you have done. So now you don't have any other respite, and hell is going to be your abode.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Samra, we did not start the Q&A session yet, so let's end the discussion segment first, and then we'll come back to you.
I didn't know that.
Sorry. So I'm sorry. I'm guilty of violating that. I totally forgot.
That's okay.
Sorry about that.
So Dr. Saleem, Sabine Gha, do you have something else to add to the discussion? If it's a question, please hold on.
जी अस्सलामुअलैकुम, शुक्रिया। नहीं, सवाल नहीं है, ये बस उसके रियाकारी के मौजू के बारे में बात करनी है, कर सकती हूँ?
Yeah, go ahead.
जी शुक्रिया। मुझे लगता है कि रियाकारी हमारे चाहने से या ना चाहने से हो इसलिए जाती है कि समाज जिस सोच पे मबनी है ना, उसमें मसला है। सरमायाकार निजाम ये है, कहता है यही है कि आप आके बढ़ो। किस तरीके से आप बढ़ें कि आप कंज्यूम करो, कंज्यूम करोगे आप अपने जिंदगी को सेंस देंगे, आप कुछ बनेंगे। तो अगर हम फर्स्ट तरह शादियों का मौजू लाया गया है, अगर हम इसलिए शादियों में शामिल हों, खुश हों कि हमारे समाज में एक हलाल काम किया गया है, हमारे समाज को बचाया गया है गलत काम से, हराम काम से, तो हो सकता है कि इस तरह में ये रियाकारी से बचा जाए। लेकिन जब आपने जगह बनानी है ना, करने से या ना करने से इंसान रियाकारी में गिर सकता है। जैसे रियाकारी थी, मैंने अपना काम शुरू किया तो किसी को ये महसूस होया। मसला ये है कि जब हम किसी कंपनी में कह रहे हैं कि आप बेस्ट एम्प्लॉई बनो, आप बेस्ट से बेस्ट काम करो, पीछे तो फिर सरमाया काम निज़ाम है ना, तो वो सोच ही ऐसी है कि अगर हम किसी एक प्रोजेक्ट के लिए काम करें, उस मकसद से कि हमने एक साथ हो के सबकी जिद्दोजहद मान के तो हमने एक पॉइंट पे पहुंचना है, तो हो सकता है कि रियाकारी कम हो सके।
Yes, Sabine, you are right to some extent, but you see, we just cannot present this as a scapegoat. We cannot legitimize our actions by simply pinning all the fault on the society by saying that, well, it's a capitalist society. It will always try to bring this out from you, that you display your traits in a way that you overawe other people. I do accept that this is something that does happen in our society, and people who, I mean, unless they adopt these ways, or may I say ill ways, they seldom get a chance to elevate themselves in society. But as I said again, in spite of these constraints, in spite of these hindrances, I would say, we still need to understand that our own struggle and our own effort ultimately has to be for the hereafter. And yes, this doesn't mean that you have to neglect this world. It has its own challenges. But if that hereafter is something which is before our mind, and we know what the requisites of the hereafter are, we can find ways and means to try to achieve that balance. And at times we may not be able to do so. And in those circumstances, in that case, I do think that God will be merciful to us. But then this still has that ring to it, that we must keep on trying the best we can do. I mean, at times it does not become possible for us to achieve a certain target in life, but at other times we are able to do so. It's like a constant struggle. It's something that will just end when our life ends. So at least we need to be aware that this is a challenge that stares us in the eye, and we will not bog ourselves down before the challenge. We'll try to stare it in the eye and do our best.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. That was it for all the participants who wanted to participate in the discussion. If you have any concluding remarks, and then we'll move on to the Q&A.
So I think just to sum up, showing off, as I said, basically is a manifestation of arrogance, something that we have of our own selves, about thinking of our own selves, if we are full of our own selves. And it is here that the Quran keeps on checking us, because remember, the greatest enemy of God was Satan, and God has said about Satan that he was the biggest, he was the biggest enemy of the truth, and he was the biggest denier of the truth. And at the same time, he was arrogant. So arrogance personified is Satan. So this is a trait that we need to get rid of. Arrogance is something that has to be targeted. At times it is very subtle, and at times it is very blatant. So when it's very subtle, you always need to check yourself. And I think if you have this attitude of continuously checking upon your own self, continuously subjecting yourself towards self-accountability, you do get to know what has happened in that day. And it's just a question of retrying, rethinking your way the next day. As the sun dawns upon you, you have a new day before you. You make this commitment that today I'll not commit the same mistake regarding arrogance and showing off which I did my previous day, because your conscience will always tell you what you did. And as I said, this is something that we constantly need to do.
Thank you for that, Dr. Saleem. Moving on to Q&A, our first question asks, if one's career relates to marketing themselves, then is it like showing off?
I don't think so. I mean, it depends on what marketing yourselves means. I mean, is there an example at hand?
They didn't give an example at hand, but some ways I can think, for example, social media influencers.
Normally
yeah, there, for
I mean,
example,
it
to
all depends
continue.
on. Okay.
Oh, I was gonna give an
Okay. So
example.
should
So, like, to continue getting brand deals, you have to sort of buy a lot of brands, show them off, and then show yourself off using them or whatnot, and then just so that you can continue bringing in more people and more money to these brands, and that's how more brands are gonna reach out to you as well. So we were at the question about marketing yourself and if that is
oh
considered showing
yes.
off.
Hmm. Yeah. So as I said that I mean it depends on the profession that you have chosen. Your show business is something in which basically it is yourself that you are presenting as a. I mean you're showcasing something. It could be a talent. It could be something. So it all depends. I mean I would not classify it to be showing off per se, but I mean it has its own pushes and pulls, and it's a person's very, I would say, precariously. I mean, it's like a precariously balanced situation in which you might tilt this way or you might not. So I think my final answer would be that you should leave this answer to your own conscience.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Akram Bhatti, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Walaikum assalam.
Sir, I have a personal issue with my grandchildren. Somebody, when you were away, said something about how parents should be nice to the kids by disciplining. But I have issue with my grandchildren. I teach them, try to teach them Quran the translation, and they try to avoid the class every so often, like once a month. Oh, we are busy. We are out of out of the house. We have guests over. So once in a while I get hard on them. Like yesterday, I told them, don't come over on the Eid or nothing. I'm not gonna see you guys anymore. So I got a little free. So and then I feel bad about it. The Eid is coming out, and how can I not see
Right.
them? So,
I think we have to understand that yeah. Please go ahead.
that's it.
Please go ahead.
I feel bad, but then I don't know how to.
Okay.
They live away from me,
Yes.
and they know Quran, but they like everybody else. They do not know the translation.
How
And
old are they? What are their age?
30,
What
13,
are their ages?
13, 14, and well, 2 are 14, but one is my
Okay.
my brother's grandchild, and 2 are
I
mine. So
understand.
13, 2,
I mean, you
13, 1,
see,
14.
this is, I understand. This is an age which is the onset of adolescence, and every boy and girl would like some freedom, and at the same time, parents and grandparents, they would like to curtail that freedom and to impose certain things on them. So I think that need to understand or maybe analyze that why is it that they are evading such a class? Is the class boring? Is the instructor not presenting things in an interesting way? Because you see, there is a method to everything. Forcing people to study or forcing people to attend Quran classes or Islam classes, I don't think it's a very good idea. It does not sit well. Children will, I mean, they might at first accept them or maybe attend them out of respect, but sooner or later they will not be able to do so. You see, it is the teacher who must captivate them, or the content must captivate them in any way. And I think if religion is properly taught, if it is properly taught, it has the potential. If not religion, what else? Because it has been revealed to us from God. It has that complete potential of captivating a person's mind, his or her attention. I think in most cases, these Sunday schools, as I've seen in North America, in many other countries as well, they are extremely boring. They are. I mean, imagine that you are in 5 days of your own life. You're studying. You're doing your schoolwork, and then on the seventh day, you are made to attend 3 or 4 hours or 2 or 3 hours of these classes. And those classes themselves have a very obsolete way of teaching. So please do go. I mean, go through the contents. That what are they being taught? Why is it that they are no longer being entrusted? And sit to them, talk to them. Debate or discuss with them instead of scolding them. Just ask them that what is it that makes them turn away from these classes. So I think the cause has to be determined.
I'm not claiming I'm the best teacher. Probably a lot of my fault also. But thing is that we have one class, one hour every week. Usually weekend, and they would not like it as a well. It's too disturbing. We discuss this. We have to weekend the only one we have to do our plays
I think
and games and this and
yes,
that. Okay.
see, in a way, they are right. I mean, they are starting all the week, and on a Sunday or a Saturday, you once again. So I think it has to be
So
done in a way that it doesn't.
So with the discussing, after discussing with them, we moved it to Friday. It's the same reason like you just mentioned. We discussed and said,
right.
How about Friday? Friday is okay. How about Friday? So we settled on that, but still every so often, they're doing okay.
I think, as I said, you need to talk to them, talk it out with them, and ask them that what is it that they don't find interesting? What is it that sort of they don't find themselves an inclination towards this class? And I would suggest that if they don't, for any reason, I mean, unless you are able to pin that reason, it's better not to force them, because forcing them and attending as a result would just maybe appease your own ego, or maybe you would think, yes, they are doing something, but in their own internal heart or in their own internal capacity, they would be hating it. So we have to think of ways and means as parents, as grandparents, and as teachers, to make the stuff very interesting. They leap for that stuff, and there are ways and means in which you can do that, I think. So we need to discover those ways and means.
So our kids they all know Quran, and they all like us. They read Quran just without understanding. And now I thought
You see, that is how their parents have taught them. That is how their grandparents and all of us have been. That has been the norm for so many. I mean, I cannot say centuries, but at least the last century. So I mean, we have to understand that this is a background that we have inherited. We have to make the teaching of religion to be very interesting. And I have seen, and I personally developed a lot of techniques for that, because I do teach young minds as well. Activity-based learning, experiential learning, topic-wise learning, case study learning. These are new methods of learning. They are not exactly new. They are still, they are many. They are decades old. But in religion, we don't employ them. I think activity-based learning has a lot of potential to offer if we use it for religious instruction.
Thank
Would
you very much.
suggest any booklet or any of your method that have been successful?
I have written a book. It's called, let me see what was it called. It's called Quranic Workshops on Character Building, something like that is the title. It's basically an experiential learning book, and there is also a teacher's guide of that book. So it's like a 15 lesson. It has 15 lessons, and all of them are experiential learning. I mean, you don't teach. You basically give that stuff to the youngsters, and they teach you back. It's called reverse teaching, and it has. It's slightly in a way that you need to be a little more trained in that. So I have written a manual for the teachers as well, so how you conduct these 15 sessions, and I often conduct them whenever I go.
What's the name of it, sir? If you don't mind repeating it.
It's called Quranic Workshops. I think it's called Quran Workshops. Workshops on the Quran.
Quran Workshop.
Yes, Quran Workshops.
Quran Workshop. Okay. Thank you, sir. By Shehzad Saleem.
So where is it available, sir?
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
I think it is available wherever books of Mawrid are available. You'll find, it to be available.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Calling for more questions. I saw a raised hand that went down. If Siddiqa, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. If I could just take a minute and say something based on what Akram Bhatti Saab was just talking about. My daughter is almost 17. So for the past 5 years, my father introduced her to the Al-Mawrid weekend classes. So now she also listens to Dr. Khalid Zahir and Dr. Shehzad Saleem, and she's a true fan. She loves listening to the ones that are geared towards the youth. And there's so many recorded classes that, there's a lot of material out there. But for regular classes, she takes them through Al-Mawrid. And her teacher is Ahmed Sahab. And my daughter, who I felt sorry for a few times, that in the whole week she goes to school, she's in grade 11, and then 8 o'clock in the morning, she's up attending the class. I never had to ask her once. And so what Dr. Shehzad Saleem said at the beginning of this was that it really depends on the teacher, not to make it boring, to do that effort. And Yazdani Saab is so amazing. He made my work zero. So literally, I never have to remind her ever. She actually comes and tells me what she did in class and what they talked about. She has him saved on her private WhatsApp number. She talks to him. That speaks loudly about what kind of a teacher he is. So I just wanted to add that, Akram Bhatti Saab.
So, I mean, you can refer Akram Saab to those classes that maybe your daughter is taking, and I mean, these are offered, I think, once a week, every Sunday or Saturday, and maybe they can try it out.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for sharing your resources, Siddiqa. Abrar, please go ahead.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम सर।
वालेकुम अस्सलाम।
सर मेरा क्वेश्चन था कि एक हदीस मैंने पढ़ी थी जिसमें ये लिखा हुआ था कि मुसलमान और कुफार के दरमियान फ़र्क नमाज है, और इसके अलावा भी एक आयत भी पेश की जाती है कि नमाज कायम करो, मुशरिकीन में ना हो जाओ। तो आखिर नमाज कायम करने के साथ शिर्क का क्या मतलब रिलेशन है? शिर्क तो ये हो गया ना कि कोई शख्स अल्लाह की ज़ात में या फिर सिफ़ात में किसी और को शरीक ठहराए। तो अगर कोई शख्स नमाज नहीं पढ़ता तो वो मुशरिक कैसे हो जाता है?
नहीं, मुशरिक नहीं हो जाता, वो मुशरिकों का तरीका इख्तियार कर लेता है। यानी वहाँ उस रवायत का ये मतलब नहीं है कि अगर आप ये करेंगे तो आप ये बन जाएंगे। ये बताना मकसूद ये है कि जैसे वो मुशरिक ये काम करते हैं तो आप उनकी तरह ही बन जाएंगे, आप भी यही काम करना शुरू कर देंगे।
I do have one question. Can I go ahead?
Please go ahead.
Assalamu Dr. Saleem. Dr. Saleem,
Right.
regarding the concept of arrogance, if you remember last time I asked about a devil and he's refusing to bow down to the atom. You said that it's because he was disobeying Allah, right? So, but right now in our society, I mean, Allah is out of the equation. He's not in front of us, right? So the concept of arrogance, like ghamtun nas, batrul haq. So, for example, to better put my question, if a triple PhD comes to me and say that I am better than you, I know more than you, is he arrogant in that way? I
cannot comment on this. I mean, this is everything has a context, everything has a background, everything is situational. So unless I'm there in that situation, I cannot say. And more than that, I mean, I cannot judge a person's intention. This is God's domain. Whether he is being arrogant or not is his own personal choice. So I should be, I mean, ignoring his arrogance if it is there, because one, I might not even able to, I mean, I might not be able to gauge it. And the second thing is that if he has come to you for a specific purpose, I think concentrate more on that purpose and ignore this, because as I said, I mean, this could be a sentence in which it could have a certain meaning. It could be a sentence of bragging and boasting also. They're all possibilities. And the thing is that you should concentrate more on the substance.
Okay, understood, Dr. Saleem.
Thank you very much. Riaz Khan, please go ahead.
Starting, Doc. There is a hadith which he quoted, as Prophet ﷺ's hadith is saying that these days, the Hajj days, the 10 days, and especially the day of Arafah is the best day, and it's compared to a shaheed coming back with losing his wealth or his life. In other words, I don't exactly know the hadith, but it's usually being quoted. How significant is it, and what's the relevance of this to days of Ramadan? There was
Ramadan or Zul-Hajj?
No, what I'm saying is that
yes, go
about
ahead.
confusion in my mind about the hadith which says that these 10 days are best of the year, best days of the year. Now, when we say best days, or when it's been quoted as
I do understand. please do remember that the words which are being transferred to us are basically the understanding of the narrators. What the Prophet might have said, we just cannot know. So we need to understand all these words in the light of the Quran. And if you look at the Quran and if you look at the established Sunnah of the Prophet, then we do find that these 10 days have been given importance. If you do, because these are 10 days in which basically it's time for Hajj. People are preparing for Hajj. It's a huge ritual. Not everyone goes there. There are other people who might not be going for Hajj, but they are trying to partake or maybe have some portion in it, because when they don't cut their nails, they don't cut their hair. So then that those 10 days are the ones in which they are participating in that ritual in their own way. So yes, they do carry significance, but to say that they are the best of all days and there's no other day which is better than these days, I think this is more related to the understanding of the narrators. All that we can safely say is that they are blessed days. They are days which have veneration. They are days in which people will be rewarded. The extent of reward and the extent of that compensation is something that God knows. All that we can know is that these are blessed days.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Abrar, please go ahead.
सर मेरी लास्ट में एक रिक्वेस्ट थी कि सर प्लीज एथिज्म के हवाले से अगर कोई अच्छी सी बुक हो तो प्लीज वो रेकमेंड कर दीजिए. अगर आपको कोई लेक्चर हो तो प्लीज वो मेंशन कर दीजिएगा, ताकि लॉजिकल तरीके से हम उस चीज को काउंटर कर पाएं सेल्फ स्टडी के लिए.
Right. I think in a very recent issue of our Urdu monthly journal Ishraq, Ustad Ghamidi has written an article which refutes atheism. I think it might be appearing this month, or maybe it has already, because I just read it before it's publishing. So before it got printed. Thank
you very much, Dr. Saleem. Could you please repeat the name of the book again? You were cutting off a little bit.
So I was referring to a journal, our Urdu journal, Al-Mawrid Pakistan publishes an Urdu journal which is called Ishraq, ISHRAQ, and it is available online. I think you'll find it to be published next month in July, or maybe in June. I have not checked that. So it's due to be published. So that's a good resource on atheism.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I'm putting down the link for Ishraq US in the chat. So if we have no more questions, iPhone, please go ahead.
Sure. I have a two-part question, if I may. The first one is, generally the Al-Mawrid view, might be wrong, on adhkar or zikr it's somewhat limited, saying it's more of a cultural thing rather than something that has an impact. So the focus should be on logical reasoning and capabilities, as opposed to doing a lot of zikr. That's my understanding. But I guess I'm trying to connect that with the point that gentleman just mentioned about the blessed days of Zulhijjah and how it's Zulhijjah, and has mentioned that you should say some adhkar to maximize those days. So I was wondering your view on that. And part two, if I may, you mentioned about with regards to showing off.
I'm sorry, I've not understood your first question. What
my
exactly?
First question is my first part A was that it appears that the Al-Mawrid view generally on a zikr or saying a certain adhkar is somewhat limited. It says they should focus on your logical reasoning and capabilities, as opposed to an over-reliance or over-reliance on zikr, which culturally in Pakistan there's a lot of impact on that. But whereas in the West, people growing up see it as a combination. You do your best and then you do your zikr as well. So I'm just trying to marry that up with the fact that the gentleman asked earlier about the 10 days of Zulhijjah, of how they're going to be blessed. So you're encouraged to do more zikr in those days because you may get reward for those. So I was wondering how you see that in itself, beyond your capabilities, etc., just the fact of zikr within those 10 days. And my part B was, if I may, you mentioned that with regards to showing off, the things that are kind of occur to your natural soul feeling that you should seek protection from, so that you don't go towards showing off, etc. Just like that, you can get feelings of fatal feelings when you're confronted with a lot of problems. Someone could be and they can't see a way out. So many people have suicidal feelings and things like that. So what is your view on dealing with those things if it's away from saying du'as and saying zikr, because obviously most people try to their capabilities, but still at times you can be stuck. Does those two questions make sense?
I'm trying to make sense of the second part. But the first
Okay,
part, as far as you
sure, go ahead. Go ahead, please.
So you see, you have to understand first of all what zikr stands for in the Quran. I mean, we have generally interpreted zikr to mean as if we are going to say certain words on those beads or that rosary that we normally have. So that. I mean, that is our own interpretation. The Quran is replete with verses which says that believers are those who continuously remember God. Allazina yazkuruna Allaha qiyaman wa qu'udan wa ala junubihim. They remember God by sitting, standing, and lying on their backs. So zikr is basically understanding God's way of dealing with His creatures, and it's a much broader thing. For example, whenever you feel fresh and good and you feel blessed, you say Alhamdulillah. Whenever you have done something bad, you say Astaghfirullah. When you see something very exalted and glorious, you say Subhanallah. I mean, these are all forms of zikr. I mean, what my understanding is that they should be spontaneous. They should come out of your heart when you, as a reaction or as a response to things that come your way. But when you artificially manufacture zikr, I mean, it becomes more of a habit. It becomes more of a artificially created habit that seldom has an impact because now you're counting certain words on those beads. So the zikr which is mentioned in the Quran does not confine itself in any way to this mention. It refers to how you can, for example, reflect on the creation of the heavens and the earth. You reflect on the attributes of God, how He's Rahman, how He's Rahim. You thank Him for His blessings. You are always turning to Him for all your supplications. You think that He's your sole provider. So you're always making dua to Him. This is also a form of zikr. So, I mean, if you take zikr the way the Quran has presented it, it encompasses your life. But how does it encompass your life? It is a spontaneous response that you give to things that come your way. If you are able to do that, you'll find that is a very important aspect. The prayer that we offer 5 times a day, they themselves constitute a form of zikr. The Quran that you might be studying every now and then, that is again a zikr. So you see, it all depends how you take the meaning of zikr. Perhaps what I would not concur with, or I would not go along with, is this act of quantifying zikr by counting certain words on numbers. So that is how it has changed its meaning. The Quran has never said zikr to be of this form. As I said, it's like a spontaneous response towards God, towards His favors, towards His blessings, towards your own, shortcomings in which you express God, your own humility, and you ask for God's forgiveness, or maybe ask for His help. These are all forms of zikr. I mean, if you think that's like thinking, you're always thinking about God. If your life is oriented such that you're always thinking about how God would want me to respond in a certain situation, that precisely is what zikr. I mean, there's nothing different about that.
So if I may just seeking time just elaborate on that. So there's certain let's say scholars outside of the Pakistan cultural norm, let's say, which talk about, let's say, quantity of zikr. Let's take that away and taking your point. But there's other scholars who would say, okay, these certain du'as help, right? Not in terms of the number of times you do them, where there is protection from something, where there's relief from something, where there's help from something, where there's from evil thoughts.
So it all depends on the words. I mean, if these du'as have been masnoon du'as, these are du'as that have been said by prophets of God or by Prophet Muhammad himself, why not? I mean, no one's going to stop you from that. It's like something that comes to your mind. These are better words that you might be thinking the same, you might have the same feeling, but you have words which are much more appropriate. So that is one thing that you should do. There's nothing stopping that. There's nothing discouraging you from that.
Okay, so there's some value to it, in a way, basically, as long as it's meaningful, heartfelt. That be fair?
Yeah, it has to be out of your understanding, something that comes spontaneously, something mind is involved.
Yeah. Okay,
Thank you very much. Okay, So seems like we have no more questions. If not, we'll be ending the session here. Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem, for all your wonderful insights and tips. And thanks to all the participants for, one, joining us for the discussion and sharing your wonderful thoughts and experiences, and also for asking really good questions. Inshallah, see you all tomorrow in another session of textual study of the Qur'an. And any concluding remarks, Dr. Saleem, before we end today?
I think it's just the same that we have always thought about and discussed, that we should be seekers of the truth. We should try our best to undertake this quest. It's a fascinating journey. And you should enjoy it, because it's like a journey in which you are trying to discover the truth. And we don't become dogmatic. We should not become prejudiced or biased in any way. Our bias should be towards the truth and not towards any personal or vested interest.
Thank you for that, Dr. Saleem. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thanks, everyone.